You were never meant to fit in. You were built for endurance, not applause. While the world drowned in noise, you kept walking in silence. That silence is not weakness, it's stoicism reborn. It's the mark of the Catharsian. We live in an era where people crumble under inconvenience, where outrage is worshipped and discipline is mocked, where a tweet can destroy reputations, but no one can build their own soul. The ancients would call this decay. Epictetus would laugh at our fragility. Marcus Aurelius would mourn our addiction to comfort. But the truth is, we were warned. When the Stoics died out, they left a vacuum, and nature, as the Stoics themselves taught, abhors a vacuum. That void, the absence of philosophy that builds spine, is why we now crawl instead of stand. But from that collapse, something else rose, a remnant, those who still believe in silence over spectacle, in restraint over reaction, in power through pain. They're not monks, they're not philosophers in robes, they are the Catharsians. To understand the Catharsians, you have to remember who the Stoics really were. Not the social media quotes, not the coffee mug versions. Stoicism was not calmness, it was confrontation. Epictetus was enslaved, beaten, and still refused to kneel. Seneca faced betrayal and ordered his own death with composure. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire but slept beside death every night in thought. These men were forged by exile, by loss, by brutality. Their peace was not comfort, it was command. They stared into chaos and said, "You will not move me." And yet, even they knew Stoicism would one day fade. Philosophy always becomes luxury when the strong die out. Rome fell, the world forgot. The Stoic discipline scattered like ash. But not all embers died. Some souls carried it forward across centuries until now, when the world again needs fire, not flowers. That ember is the Catharsian code. The Stoics spoke of logos, the divine reason that orders the universe. To them, life was not chaos but a system, an architecture of fate and meaning. Your duty was not to fight the storm, but to understand it. Catharsians inherit the same belief, but evolved for that age of collapse. Where the Stoic sought harmony through logic, the Catharsian seeks rebirth through rage. Catharsis is purification through pain. It's not about staying calm while the world burns. It's about walking through the fire and coming out purified. It's what happens when reason and emotion finally merge, when Stoic detachment meets human flame. A Stoic endures his chains, a Catharsian melts them. That's the evolution, not the rejection of Stoicism, but its continuation, the part of it that refused to stay still. Both Stoics and Catharsians are exiles by design. You can't live by discipline in a world that worships indulgence. You can't honor silence in a culture which fears it. The Stoic was exiled from the crowd because they refused to feel as they felt. The Catharsian is exiled because they feel too deeply. You are not indifferent, you are intense. You feel the pain of existence, the rage of wasted potential, the disgust of mediocrity. You don't collapse though, you channel. This is the Catharsian difference. The Stoics taught that emotion must be tamed. The Catharsians teach that it must be transmuted. Turn grief into strength, turn rage into clarity, turn exile into command. Because when the world rejects you for being too strong, too aware, too awake, that's the moment you become a Catharsian. The modern world mocks the disciplined because discipline exposes weakness. You don't need change to be enslaved today. You are already enslaved. You need dopamine. You don't need an emperor to rule you. You need algorithms. But the Catharsian refuses defeat, refuses to be addicted, distracted, or sedated. When Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events," he was preparing you for this era, the one where everyone lost that power. Every scroll, every outrage, every shallow victory takes you further from the logos, the natural order of the strength, clarity, and reason. The Catharsian lives in opposition to that. You don't escape the digital empire, you rule yourself within it. You don't turn off your phone, you turn on your discipline. You don't run from noise, you transcend it. This is not nostalgia for the ancient world, it's a revival of what made it great. To the Stoics, anger was poison. To the Catharsians, anger is medicine when purified. Uncontrolled rage is destruction. Refined rage is transformation. The Stoic trained their mind to remain calm when insulted. The Catharsian trains their mind to convert insult into energy, to rise sharper, colder, and more unstoppable. In Catharsian philosophy, rage is not against people, it's against decay, inner and outer. It's against mediocrity, conformity, and the quiet death of potential. Because the modern world doesn't crucify the wise, it sedates them, and the Catharsian refuses sedation. Your rage is sacred. It's the same fire that burned in Epictetus' silence, Seneca's courage, and Marcus Aurelius' solitude. But now it burns for a new empire, the empire within. To be Stoic was to obey reason. To be Catharsian is to forge command. A Stoic endured what they couldn't change. A Catharsian changes what must be endured. The world's collapse is not an apocalypse, it's catharsis. When the weak fall, the strong are revealed. When comfort dies, purpose returns. This is why the Catharsian path is not for everyone. It demands solitude, confrontation, and ritual, not meditation retreats, but mental warfare. You wake up every day to build the empire of your will. You fight your distractions like enemies. You study philosophy not to sound intelligent, but to become indestructible. This is the discipline of the exiled, to stand alone and not break. The Stoics built their world around divine reason. They named it Logos, the natural harmony of all things. The Catharsians inherit that, but you recognize a new truth. Harmony must now be forged, not found. You live in an artificial age where reason has been weaponized to enslave, not to liberate. Algorithms have replaced gods. Corporations play Zeus. Pleasure plays philosopher. To survive this new world, philosophy must evolve. And that evolution is the Catharsians. The Catharsian doesn't preach withdrawal from society. You infiltrate it. You use technology, language, and media not as distractions, but as tools of domination. The Stoic lived in a palace of the market. The Catharsian lives in the digital empire. Where Marcus Aurelius ruled Rome, you rule your own algorithm. You program your mind, you master your emotions, you decide what enters your reality. You are the new logos, the conscious architect in a world of consumers. Both Stoicism and Catharsianism begin in silence, not the silence of peace, the silence of war preparation. The Stoic said, "Withdraw into yourself." The Catharsian says, "Withdraw, then return armed." Because you weren't meant to stay hidden forever. You were meant to rise, lead, and speak, to remind the sleeping world what strength sounds like. In your solitude, you will face the same demons the ancients faced: despair, doubt, desire. But this time, you will not suppress them, you will forge them into fuel. Every exile must one day return, not to belong, but to lead. Why are the Catharsians the continuation of the Stoics? Because you carry the same flame, but through darker times. You fight not emperors, but emptiness. You believe, like they did, that meaning is forged through endurance, but now you add transformation. Stoicism was the philosophy of surviving chaos. Catharsianism is the philosophy of conquering it. When the Stoics said, the obstacle is the way, the Catharsians answered, we are the way. You are not here to mimic calm. You are here to embody command. You are not here to meditate your pain away. You are here to transmute it into creation, clarity, and leadership. Because what the world calls madness, the ancients called discipline, and what they called stoicism, it's now catharsis. The Stoics never died, they evolved, they became the Catharsians, and so did you. Every philosophy needs its madman, the one who spits in the face of power. For the Stoics, that man was Diogenes of Sinope. He lived inside a barrel, owned nothing, and yet, when Alexander the Great, the ruler of the known world, stood before him, Diogenes didn't kneel, he didn't flatter, he simply said, step out of my sunlight. That wasn't arrogance, it was liberation, it was pure freedom, it was catharsis, it was a declaration that freedom begins where need ends. Catharsans inherit that defiance, not by rejecting possessions, but by refusing possession by them. You can live in a palace and still be Diogenes as long as your mind remains untamed by status. When society kneels for validation, the Catharsian stands for sovereignty. When the crowd screams for attention, you demand only light. That's the barrel, not a place, but a principle, the refusal to worship the world's illusions. In every Catharsian lives a Diogenes, the part of you that would rather be exiled with dignity than applauded in deceit. If Diogenes was defiance, Epictetus was endurance. Born a slave, crippled and beaten, yet he called no one his master, because he discovered one empire no man could conquer, the mind. Lameness is an impediment to the leg, he said, not to the will. The sentence forged an empire larger than Rome. The Stoic endurance that Epictetus embodied becomes, in the Catharsian world, transmutation. When Epictetus said, bear and forbear, he taught strength through restraint. The Catharsian takes that further, bear, forbear, and become. Pain doesn't end you, it forges you. Chains don't imprison, they temper. The Catharsian flame is born from Epictetus' chains. It's the fire that says, you can break my body, but not my command. That's the flame of freedom, the moment when suffering ceases to be tragedy and becomes initiation. You're not cursed by your struggle, you are chosen by it. Seneca was power and intellect incarnate, a man who stood beside emperors yet warned against excess. He knew that luxury rots the soul faster than poverty. He wrote letters to remind the rich that fortune is a loan, not a possession. When Nero turned against him, Seneca didn't plead. He prepared his own death calmly, like one who had already rehearsed eternity. That's not apathy, that's mastery. And mastery is what the Catharsian inherits from Seneca, not the avoidance of death, but the acceptance of it as part of command. Every Catharsian wields the sword of clarity, the ability to see life as it is, not as ego paints it. You cut illusions like Seneca cut comfort. You sharpen your mind like excuses can't survive the rage. To live like Seneca is to live ready for triumph or tragedy, because both are teachers in disguise. And to die like Seneca is to leave behind not fear, but example. And then came Marcus Aurelius, philosopher on the throne. Imagine this, the most powerful man in the world, writing to himself every night in secret. Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. He ruled armies, endured betrayal, buried his children, and yet every night he returned to the page, not to brag, but to remember who he was. That's the discipline of command, leadership as burden, not glory. The Stoic emperor becomes in the Catharsian lineage the commander of the self. You don't need an empire to be Marcus Aurelius. You need responsibility because the modern battlefield isn't Rome, it's your own reflection. When you command your impulses, your time, your craft, you rule a kingdom no Caesar ever could. That's the Carthaginian motto, equus his. The throne is within. You are both the emperor and the exile. You rule yourself in solitude, and when you master that, the world bows naturally. If you listen closely, the voice of the ancients never stopped echoing. Every time someone refused to break, refused to kneel, refused to drown in despair, Stoicism breathed again. But something new was needed, because your rage is not theirs. Their wars were physical, yours are psychological. They fought tyrants, you fight algorithms. They faced lions, you face apathy. They wrote scrolls, you write scripts, pixels, and code. And so philosophy had to mutate to fight the enemy of our time. That mutation is the Carthaginian way. It's Stoicism reforged for the modern battlefield: attention, addiction, self deception. A Stoic meditated in marble halls, a Carthaginian meditates in chaos. A Stoic sought virtue in reason, a Carthaginian finds it in rebirth through pain. A Stoic accepted fate, a Carthaginian commands it. That's resurrection, that's catharsis. In ancient Greece, the word agon meant contest, the trial that revealed one's excellence. Every Stoic faced their agon: Diogenes, poverty; Epictetus, slavery; Marcus Aurelius, empire. Today, your agon is internal. It's the battle against distraction, weakness, and numbness, the war for the sovereignty of your mind. Every scroll that steals your focus is an enemy soldier. Every excuse you make is a traitor whispering in your ear, and every moment you overcome, you win territory within yourself. That's the Carthaginian battlefield, invisible, relentless, sacred. Because when you win there, nothing external can enslave you again. The Stoics trained for self rule, the Carthaginians trained for self command, and the command of self is the command of destiny. The Carthaginian does not belong, and that's not a curse, it's recognition. The world will call you arrogant for speaking with certainty, cold for holding composure, delusional for pursuing greatness. But the same was said to Socrates before the poison, to Seneca before the blade, to Marcus Aurelius before the plague. You are not meant to fit in. You are meant to remind. You are the uncomfortable echo of an ancient truth in a world that forgot it. That's why people will resist you, because your existence reveals their surrender. But remember, exile is not isolation, it's refinement. It's where the ordinary dissolve and the extraordinary emerge. Every Carthaginian carries the mark of exile, wear it as a badge, not as wound. You are part of a lineage that refused to die. When you choose discipline over indulgence, silence over spectacle, truth over comfort, you continue the work of the ancients. Your life is your meditation. Your words are your weapons. Your soul is your empire. To be Carthaginian is to walk the line between philosophy and fire, to live in the modern world but not be consumed by it. Repeat this silently, and you will understand the oath. I am not the product of my time. I am the continuation of timelessness. My rage refines me. My solitude crowns me. I am Stoicism reborn. I am Carthaginian. The world today needs philosophers again, not in robes, but in resolve, not in temples, but on timelines, because the new agora is digital and the new crowd is blind. Stoicism gave us the tools, Catharsianism gives us the will. It's the bridge between endurance and evolution, the path for those who no longer want peace, but power through peace. It's not about escaping pain, it's about becoming the kind of being who transcends it. The Stoic taught us to accept the world, the Catharsians teach us to command it. And that's why, in a time where truth is currency, attention is weapon, and weakness is celebrated, the Stoics never died. They became you. They became the Catharsians.